voice. But then again, since he learned how to talk and use his words, and that scowl as a weapon, I never really had a choice. One of the earliest memories I had of him was from preschool. He tipped ice-cold water from the water station over my head, then said I'd formally been initiated as his best friend. I hadn't wanted to be his best friend, but whenever I'd screamed that at him over the following years, he'd give one of those infuriating smiles and simply say, "Like I care, Freckles." And that had been that. I had no say. And if I was being honest, sometimes it still bothered me. But as the years swung on, I'd somehow grown to care about the asshole. He was the brother I never, ever wanted. "I'm dying to know if that boy has caused May to go gray yet," Mom said with a dry lilt to her voice. Once upon a time, our mothers, May and Peony, had been best friends. They'd met in college, and before they graduated, they'd made a pact. Marry rich and never settle for love. The crazy idea had worked, though my mother married a man almost twice her age, my dad, while May had scored a guy 10 years her senior with the looks to go with it. May didn't care about her husband's affairs with any woman wearing a skirt or blouse too tight at his company, because she'd been smart and hadn't fallen in love. However, she was rather fond of their gardener, Emmanuel, a man 8 years her junior, though she'd never admit it or leave Mikhail, her husband, for him. That would mean giving up everything she loved. Money. "Probably," I said through a yawn, eyeing the small row of shops up ahead. "But it's not like anyone will ever see it." Mom's lips pursed, and what sounded like a sigh slipped out as they parted. Mom met her boyfriend, Phil, when I was 10. Phil taught English at the public high school, treated her like a queen, and drove a second-hand white truck with a dent in the bumper he still hadn't fixed all these years later. We'd moved out of my father's mansion by the bay a month later, and even though she did seem to love Phil, we hadn't moved in with him. He didn't live with us either, though he was often at our place. Somewhere along the way, I guess my mother had grown tired of being a kept woman, and that was when the rift between her and May had formed. She'd gotten a job. Working at the local library 4 days a week didn't pay much, but it was enough for her to be able to put aside a nest egg, thank my father for everything he'd done for her, then hightail it out of there as soon as the moving truck had arrived. From mansions to 3-bedroom cottages and ball gowns to chucks and worn denim, when I was 10, my life changed overnight, and even though I'd been petrified, it didn't take me long to realize we'd be just fine. Dad had offered for me to stay with him, and although it would have been convenient to keep living close to Dash, who remained one of my few friends, I'd declined. If Dashiell wanted to see me, he'd find a way. And find a way he did. Though it took him longer than I'd have liked to quit griping about slumming it in the burbs, and he still complained about the mildew scent that drifted off the creek and seeped into our windows. I loved that creek. It ran right along the edge of our backyard, and while the amount of mosquito repellent I needed to wear out there left me smelling like a walking chemical, listening to the water gurgling downstream through my cracked open window was the best lullaby I'd ever been sung. Hair Repair was a tiny salon smothered in purple. Purple chairs, purple sinks, purple countertop, purple dryers. And you get the point. Suella smiled as I walked in, twisting a chair she'd just wiped down with a towel. I marched over and slumped into it, grinning into the mirror. She gasped, slapping my shoulder and spinning me around to grab my chin. "It's about time, girlfriend. Just in time for senior year." She gasped again, her glittery acrylic nails digging into my skin as the overbearing scent of Chanel hit my sinuses. "Homecoming."